Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Ghosts and Spirits of the Week video. I thought I would mix in one of these particular videos while I was wrapping up the Aliens and UFOs series. Also because I've been talking a whole bunch about Ghosts and Spirits videos, but mainly just of my trips. So I thought I would focus on a specific subject, like an actual haunted location with a known ghost in it, rather than one of my trips as well. So this particular suggestion was just again a random page on the ghostwikia.com website. And it was interesting because it has to do with a location that you can actually visit to this day if you happen to be there in Japan. And the location, as far as the reported ghostly encounter, is right out in the open. You can go visit it, and if you're lucky enough, then you get a chance to see this ghost in action. It has to do with a pretty tragic tale. So for this subject, it has to do with the location known as the Himeji Castle, and the haunting is known as Okiku's ghost, which you're looking at a picture of here. So a real brief history first on the castle. It's located there in Himeji, Hyogo, Japan. It's a castle that was built a long time ago. We're talking like 1300s, 1333 to 1346 to be exact. Beautiful looking castle. I mean, this is the kind of castles I remember seeing in the Godzilla vs. King Kong film. There was a very notable instance of them to essentially destroying one of these castles from scratch. So it was this one. It's very, very beautiful looking, and amazing to think that it's nearly 700 years old. And with regards to this location, you can go visit it to this very day because it is a protected cultural site. I guess that's the way that they describe it there when it comes to their historical landmarks. And so because of it, it'll pretty much be there as long as, I guess, Japan is around. So as far as this location, it's also pretty lucky because during the Second World War, the city itself, Himeji, was bombed by the United States, firebombed. So it had to do with those random bombings coming from the planes, dropping off dozens and dozens and dozens of bombs throughout the city. But this castle relatively remained undamaged. So it even had the fortune of one firebomb landing right on it, like right on the very castle itself, but it did not go off. Had it gone off, then it would have completely destroyed it. So how about that? Very, very interesting history. Now, as far as the legend of the ghost and the hauntings associated with this castle, it goes to a tragic sense. So there used to be a servant there in that castle. Remember, this was during the time when it was more like the caste system. It seemed like if you were born a slave, you were essentially a slave forever. What a rotten time it was to have been born during that time, because essentially you would have had no chance whatsoever to do anything with your life. But in this case, it had to do with a slave, a servant by the name of Okiku. And she worked in one of the dungeons there in one of the 4 guard towers. Now here's a picture of one of the towers itself, but she didn't work in that tower. Instead, she worked on the bottom portion of it. So I couldn't find a picture of the dungeons, but at least imagine entering this guard tower and then going below it. That gives you an idea of where she worked. She had one job essentially, and that was to take care of something called a Dutch golden plate. It's supposed to be like a really expensive, really, I guess, luxurious item that happened to be owned by a samurai by the name of Tessan Aoyama. Now he was actually the master of Okiku. So the way the story goes was her job was to take care of that. And that way he was considered almost like a celebrity of sorts, very popular at that time. He was always used to having his way. He was hardly, if ever, told no. And so in one tragic set of circumstances, the way the story went, he also had a wife, but he himself had a liking to Okiku. Maybe they just worked together for so long. I say the word work loosely because, again, we're talking about a master-slave system. But he took a liking to her, and he even asked her to become his mistress on the side, even promising her that if she said yes, that he would eventually leave his wife and then be with her. Now, how true this was going to be, most likely not. We're talking about someone who could get away with a lot, and then another person, in this case Okiku, with nothing really because of the system that she was born in. So either she was pretty smart about this, or she was very, very honorable and loyal, but either way she said no because she realized that none of this would come out good for her. He himself, though, again, was someone who was not used to being in that rejected manner, so he took it on a very personal level. And so the way the story continues, he took one of those golden plates and purposely gave, like, let's say, put it in a secret location that only he knew. And the reason for this was because when Okiku was doing her job and trying to count those plates, I guess, on a daily basis to make sure that they were there, she realized that one of them was missing, which put her into an anxious state, no doubt, like again, a tragic circumstance, because here she was thinking that someone had truly stolen from her when it was her actual master that did it. Sure enough, he revealed to her what had happened and told her that if she did not go with him in terms of being his mistress, then he would essentially tell everyone else, who could hear, that there was a plate missing, that it was her fault, that she did it on purpose. In other words, either stole it, sold it, whatever. Either way, she would be responsible for it, and that ultimately this would involve her being tortured because of that crime and then executed because of it as well. So again, very, very tragic circumstance, because imagine now Okiku being in that situation. Now she's almost being blackmailed to the point of execution to being with this guy because all along she had said no. So realizing that there really was no way out, and she still was not going to be that kind of woman that was going to be just with him on the side as his mistress, she went to a well outside of the castle, which you're looking at a picture of here, and then drowned herself. Like, she actually went to the well, I guess got up on it, and then just jumped into it. Who knows how far down that water was? It must have been quite a ways, because traditionally with wells, the water's not necessarily right there. You have to essentially drop the bucket a long ways down. So there she was, plummeting down and then hitting the water, and then naturally she ended up drowning after a good while, I guess, of trying to stay afloat. But then that was it. She was dead, and it was considered a suicide. But still, this guy, this Tessan Aoyama, again, the quote-unquote successful honorable samurai, he in turn started to tell everybody that she must have killed herself because of the missing plate. And so even after her death, he still made it into an unfortunate circumstance, like placing all the blame on her when clearly he was the one that caused all of this. So the way the haunting goes now is, once that occurred, Okiku's ghost started appearing around that well. There's this legend there in Japan about the yurimi, which is a type of ghost where if a person dies, let's say in a circumstance that is not traditional, like either by forced suicide or something along those lines, then it comes back as a ghost with that pitch black hair, the white dress, the kind of stuff like if you've seen the movie The Ring, that's supposed to be the type of ghost this is. Well, that was and is to this very day Okiku's ghost. And the way the story goes there was, she started appearing shortly thereafter of her suicide. She would climb out of the well, she would walk right into the castle, and then she would go to that location where those golden plates were located. And her ritual was, she would always check on the plates, and still finding one missing, which was her job, I guess, still whenever she was alive, she would start to wail uncontrollably, and of course creating a huge ruckus. Imagine a ghost like this screaming into the night, and you're hearing it right there in the castle. No doubt that it was quite a sight and quite something to hear as well. So this continued for a long, long time, but this guy, this Tessan Aoyama, he was still very stubborn. He refused to absolutely place this missing plate back. He even tried to, if he tried to reason, he tried to see maybe if he did, that would stop and that would appease the ghost. But nope, he wanted to have the last laugh, so he kept stalling on it, so much so that eventually Okiku's ghost and the ritual that she did drove him to insanity. And so he got so crazy after all these nights of this happening that he got insane himself, that he was thrown out of the castle. And who knows what happened to him, but he certainly was no longer the celebrated samurai as before. His life turned into a life of madness, and then that was it. He was no longer that elevated stature anymore. But that's the story of Okiku's ghost there, located in Himeji Castle. Apparently, if you go there to this very day, you can, in some cases, see her doing her ritual, because it seems like this plate was never ever returned wherever it's located. Who knows, this guy Tesana Yama, if he did return it, maybe he did so, but if not, then only he knew where it was, and of course he took that to his death. But this story is also one of Japan's most famous plays ever. Apparently it has so many stories, so many actors, so many theaters playing variations of this story, all to this very day. So if anything, even though Okiku had a pretty tragic life and it ended in a horrible circumstance, to this very day though, her memory is still alive about what happened to her, her honorable stance that she took against this guy, and then of course her righteousness and what she took on him afterward. All of it is still there hundreds of years later, alive is the best way I can describe it. So anyways, that's all the information I have. If anyone has been to this castle, has seen or heard or knows someone that has seen this particular ghost, that would be really good to hear too. So alright everybody, thanks again as always, take care.